My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I was 32 years old when I finally understood that being forgotten wasn't an accident. It was a choice my family made over and over again, with the kind of casual cruelty that comes from never having to think about it at all. The realization came on a Tuesday afternoon in early December. I was standing in my apartment in Harborview, one of those glass and steel condos that look out over the water, the kind of place I'd chosen specifically because it looked nothing like home. The mail had just arrived forwarded from my old address, and sitting on top of the stack of catalogs and credit card offers was a cream-colored envelope with my parents' return address embossed in the corner. I knew what it was before I opened it. The annual Christmas card. The Mitchell family's carefully curated proof of existence sent to a mailing list of 200 people who probably didn't care but would feel obligated to send one back. I opened it standing at my kitchen counter, a mug of peppermint tea cooling in my hand. The photograph was professionally lit, probably taken in October when the light in Connecticut is that perfect golden amber. My father, Richard Mitchell, stood tall and distinguished in a navy sweater. My mother, Jennifer, wore her pearls and her camera-ready smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes but photographed beautifully. And there between them was my older brother, David, 36 now, with his wife Emily beside him, her hand resting on her visibly pregnant belly. They were standing in front of the fireplace in our family home in Maple Bridge, Connecticut. The same fireplace where we'd taken Christmas photos for 30 years. Behind them, I could see the edge of David's framed lacrosse stick mounted on the wall like a religious artifact. The caption printed in elegant script below the photo read, "The Mitchell Family Christmas 2024. I stared at that caption for a long time. Then I turned the card over as if maybe I'd find myself on the back. A footnote, an afterthought. But there was nothing. Just the printed signature, "Warmest wishes, Richard, Jennifer, and David." I set the card down on the counter very carefully as if it might explode. It wasn't the first time. That was the thing. This wasn't a mistake, some unfortunate oversight where the photographer hadn't gotten the shot with me in it, or the printer had accidentally cropped me out. This was the pattern. I could trace it back through the years if I wanted to torture myself. Last Christmas. "Oh, Sarah, we thought you had plans with your friends from the city. It was such a last-minute decision to have everyone here, honey." The Christmas before that, it completely slipped our minds. "You're just so independent, sweetie." And my personal favorite from the Christmas when I was 27, "We always know you're fine on your own." These were the refrains of my December. The polite, socially acceptable ways of saying, "We didn't think of you." I took a sip of my tea. It had gone cold, but I drank it anyway, letting the sharp bite of peppermint cut through the thickness in my throat. Peppermint was my scent now, not the clove-studded oranges my mother made every Christmas, filling the house with their warm, spicy smell. Not the cinnamon potpourri she'd simmer on the stove while baking cookies for the neighbors. Those smells meant family gatherings I wasn't invited to, traditions I wasn't part of. They smelled like a party I could hear through a closed door, so I'd trained myself to love peppermint instead. Sharp, clean, uncomplicated. The smell of my own solitary peace. I could pinpoint when it all started if I wanted to, if I was in the mood to excavate old wounds. But I knew the story by heart. I was 10 years old. It was a Saturday morning, bright and cold, the kind of Connecticut winter day where the sun looks warm, but the air bites. David had a lacrosse game, an important one, though they were all important when it came to David. I'd come downstairs to find my mother at the stove, her back to me, pouring pancake batter onto the griddle with the focused precision of an artist. She was shaping it into a massive letter J. I sat at the kitchen island, swinging my legs, waiting. The clock above the stove ticked. Each second landed like a drop of water in the silence. I watched my mother flip the perfect J-shaped pancake, watched her slide it onto a plate, watched her dust it with powdered sugar and add a small pitcher of warm maple syrup. "Mom," I'd said, my voice small. She'd looked up, distracted. Can I have a pancake?" "Oh, sweetie, I've got to get these out to your brother before his game. There's bread in the pantry. Make yourself some toast, okay?" I'd slid off the stool and made myself toast, dry because I couldn't reach the butter on the top shelf of the refrigerator. It scratched my throat going down, but I ate it alone while my mother arranged David's breakfast like an offering. That was the origin point. The moment I learned my role, it only got more refined as we grew older. When I was 16, I won a regional writing prize, the Connecticut Young Writers Award. It came with a certificate, a small check for $100, and the first real spark of pride I'd felt in years. I'd come home with the certificate still in its folder, the check folded carefully in my pocket, and found my mother in the kitchen sorting mail. "Mom, look," I'd said, holding up the certificate. "I won," she'd glanced at it briefly. "That's nice, dear." Then her eyes had dropped back to the envelope in her hand, something from Yale addressed to David. "Listen while you're here. Could you proofread David's college essay? He's struggling with the conclusion, and you're so good with words." My prize wasn't a victory. It was a resume line for my real job, David's unpaid editor. But the worst one, the one that broke something for good, happened during my first year of college. I was 19, a freshman at Boston University, and I'd bought my train ticket home for Christmas a week in advance. I was excited. Stupidly, foolishly excited. I'd imagined sitting by the fireplace drinking hot chocolate, finally being seen as an adult and equal. Then my father called. "Change of plans, Sarah," he'd said, his voice brisk. "We're all flying down to Palm Beach to see your Aunt Caroline. The flights are just too expensive to add another one this late in the booking. You understand, right? We'll see you at New Year's." I understood. I canceled my train ticket. I spent that Christmas in a nearly deserted dormitory eating ramen and watching old movies on my laptop while my roommate was home with her family in Ohio. The building was so quiet I could hear the radiators clicking on and off, the only sound for miles. In January, I went to visit Grandma Helen, my mother's mother, who lived in a small cottage in Rhode Island. She'd always been different from the rest of the family. Sharp-eyed, sharp-tongued, the only person who seemed to actually see me. I was sitting at her kitchen table drinking tea when I saw it. Stuck to her refrigerator with a bright cartoon magnet shaped like a lobster was the Mitchell family Christmas card. The photograph was dated December 24th. They were all standing in front of our fireplace in Maple Bridge, wearing matching red sweaters. My parents, David, all beaming at the camera. They hadn't gone to Palm Beach at all. They just hadn't wanted me there. I remember staring at that card, the cartoon lobster grinning at me obscenely, and feeling something inside my chest go very cold and very still. I didn't cry. It was too far beyond tears. It was just the sound of a door clicking shut, quietly, but finally. "Baby," Grandma Helen had set her hand covering mine across the table. Her voice was rough with something I couldn't name. "I'm sorry." "It's fine," I'd said, and I'd meant it, because by then I'd already started building my own life, one where I didn't need invitations. That's what you do when you're the invisible daughter. You learn to cope. You have to. My coping mechanism was what I called hypercompetence. If I couldn't be wanted, I could be necessary. If I couldn't be included, I could be impressive. I threw myself into my studies, graduated summa cum laude, and landed a job at Redwood Meridian, a brand strategy agency in Harborview that smelled like cold brew coffee and quiet ambition. I was good at my job. Very good. I built narratives for other people, took their messy, complicated realities and spun them into something clean, intentional, and desirable. I found the core truth of a product and made people want it. I did the same thing with my own life. I stopped asking to come home for holidays. I stopped hinting. I stopped leaving gaps in my schedule, just in case they might this time think of me. Instead, I booked solo trips to places where snow was guaranteed and family was an abstract concept. Iceland, Norway, the Canadian Rockies. I bought myself expensive wine. I learned to cook a perfect meal for one. I made my exclusion look like my choice. And I drank peppermint tea. Standing in my apartment now holding my parents' Christmas card, I realized I'd become very, very good at being alone. I threw the card in the recycling bin. Then I poured the cold tea down the sink, rinsed the mug, and got ready for work. After all, I had a presentation in 2 days. The biggest campaign launch of my career. And unlike my family, I didn't have the luxury of forgetting what mattered. The Redwood Meridian conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the harbor, and on the morning of the Tideline Outdoors presentation, the fog was so thick you couldn't see the water. Just gray pressing against glass like the world had been erased. I liked it. It felt appropriate. A blank slate. I stood at the head of the table, my laptop connected to the big screen, and looked at the faces assembled around the glossy surface. My team, Priya, Marcus, and Liv, sat to my left, their expressions confident. On the screen patched in via video call were the Tideline executives. 3 men in their 50s, faces pixelated but alert. "Good morning, gentlemen," I said, my voice crisp in the hushed room. "Thank you for joining us. Let's get started." I advanced to the first slide, the Tideline logo old and outdated next to our proposed redesign. Clean, modern, aspirational. When you came to us 6 months ago, I continued, Tideline, Outdoors was a company stuck in the past. Your brand identity was built around conquest, summiting peaks, extreme expeditions, complicated gear for hardcore enthusiasts. But the market had shifted. Your core demographic was aging out, and younger consumers weren't buying the fantasy of conquering mountains. They wanted something simpler, something that felt accessible. I clicked to the next slide, our campaign concept. We created Find Your Signal, not about conquering mountains, about finding a moment of clarity in the noise. A weekend hike, a sunrise campsite, a single perfect breath of clean air. We repositioned Tideline from extreme outdoor gear to accessible outdoor wellness. And the results, I paused, let the anticipation build. Speak for themselves. The metrics slide filled the screen. Engagement up 420% in the 18 to 25 demographic. Sales up 78% quarter over quarter. Social media impressions exceeding 12-month projections in just 90 days. In conclusion, I said, my voice steady, we didn't just meet your targets, we crushed them. The Tideline executives were nodding, smiling. One of them, the CEO, a man named Gordon, unmuted himself. Sarah, I don't have words. This is exactly what we needed. You've completely transformed our brand. Thank you, I said. It was a team effort. After the call ended, my team erupted in quiet celebration. Priya reached over and squeezed my arm. You killed that, she whispered. I smiled, let myself feel it for a moment. The satisfaction of work done well, of proving once again that I was good at what I did. But underneath there was that familiar hollowness, the same feeling I always got after a big win. The instinct to call someone to share the victory followed immediately by the knowledge that there was no one to call. My performance review was scheduled for that Friday. I spent the week finishing up client reports, preparing for the next quarter, keeping my head down and my focus sharp. I didn't let myself think about Christmas, or the card I'd thrown away, or the fact that I'd already booked a solo trip to Iceland for the holidays. On Friday afternoon, my boss Arthur called me into his office. Arthur Chen was in his late 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who didn't waste time on pleasantries. I respected that about him. Close the door, he said. I did, then sat in the chair across from his desk. Sarah, he said, leaning back in his chair, I'm not going to waste your time with corporate platitudes. The Tideline clients are ecstatic. The board is ecstatic. You've delivered exceptional work, and that deserves exceptional recognition. He slid a heavy cream-colored envelope across the desk. Your standard raise is already in the system for January, he continued. This is a bonus effective immediately. I picked up the envelope. It was sealed, the weight of it substantial in my hands. I opened it carefully, slid out the single sheet of paper inside. It was a check, made out to me. Sarah Ann Mitchell. The number printed in stark black ink was $85,000. I stared at it until the numbers started to blur at the edges. It wasn't just money, it was a door opening. It was proof that I was valuable, that my work mattered, that I could build something entirely my own. Thank you, Arthur, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. You earned it, he replied. Go enjoy your weekend. I walked out of the office in a daze, the check secure in my bag. My hand kept touching the leather, reassuring itself it was still there. The instinct hit me immediately. Call Mom and Dad. Tell them. Share this. And just as immediately I crushed it. What would I even say? Hey, I just got an $85,000 bonus for a campaign. I led entirely on my own, isn't that amazing? And then what my mother would say. That's wonderful, sweetie, in that distracted voice she used when she wasn't really listening. My father would probably text me a link to an MBA program the way he had last month with the subject line, Have you considered grad school like your brother David had his MBA? He also had a rotating series of consulting gigs that never seemed to stick, and as far as I knew, my parents were still paying his car insurance. My $85,000 would be nice, they'd say. A good start. Before the conversation inevitably turned to David's potential, I didn't call them. My team insisted on celebrating. We went to a taco joint down the street, loud with music and the sizzle of fajitas. Priya, Marcus, and Liv raised their beer glasses. To Sarah, Marcus shouted over the noise. The only person who could make camping gear seem aspirational. We laughed. I ate. I smiled. I felt a genuine warmth sitting there with them, these people who had become my chosen family in a way my actual family never had. But after an hour, I slipped outside. The air was sharp and damp, the kind of coastal cold that gets into your bones. I leaned against the brick wall and pulled out my phone. There was only one number I wanted to call. Grandma Helen answered on the second ring. "Mitchell residence, this is the Queen speaking," she said, her voice crackling with age and humor. "Hi, Grandma," I said, and just hearing her voice made something in my chest loosen. "It's Sarah." "Sarah, sweetheart, what's that noise? Are you at a party?" "Sort of. We landed a big campaign. It went really well." "Of course it did. You're brilliant." I smiled even though she couldn't see me. "I wanted to tell you something. They gave me a bonus, Grandma. $85,000. There was a sharp, perfect silence on the line. Then she said, her voice rough with emotion, "Well, it's about damn time they noticed." My throat went tight. "I'm proud of you, kiddo," she continued. "You built this all by yourself, like I should have taught your mother to do." There was something in that last sentence, something heavy and sad. But before I could ask about it, she cleared her throat. "Now go back to your friends. Don't waste a good party." "Thanks, Grandma. I love you." "Love you too, baby." I went home after that, but sleep was impossible. The money was sitting in my savings account, now transferred from the check via mobile deposit. Combined with what I'd already saved aggressively over the past 3 years, it wasn't just a nest egg anymore. It was an escape hatch. I opened my laptop, the screen bright in my dark living room. I pulled up Zillow out of habit. I'd been browsing listings for months. A passive hobby, a way to dream. Usually I looked at minimalist lofts in the city places with clean lines and no memories. But tonight something was different. The Tideline campaign had put thousands of images in my head over the past 6 months. Granite peaks, pine forests, the long shadows of late afternoon on snowfields, mountain air so clean it hurt to breathe. On an impulse, I changed the search area. I typed High Timber Elk Rest Range. I'd driven through once, maybe 3 years ago, on a solo road trip. A small town in the mountains 3 hours from the coast. The kind of place where people went to disappear. I scrolled past log cabins and dated ranches. And then I stopped. It was an A-frame. Pure dramatic and black. All angles a dark triangle against a backdrop of snow and pine. The listing was new, only posted 3 days ago. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a massive deck that seemed to hang over nothing. Listed by Elk Rest Realty. Contact Maya Nguyen. I looked at the clock. It was 11:47 p.m. I clicked the contact number anyway, expecting a voicemail. "Elk Rest Realty, Maya Nguyen speaking." I was so startled I almost hung up. "Oh, hi. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm calling about the A-frame on Kestrel Ridge. I know it's incredibly late." "The city folks always call late," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "It's when you have time to dream right. That house is a beauty. Just came on the market." "I'm in Harborview," I said. "I can't get up there for a few days to see it." "No problem. I'm about 10 minutes away. You want a video walkthrough right now?" My phone buzzed. A FaceTime request from an unknown number. I accepted. Maya's face appeared framed by a parka hood, her breath fogging in the cold. She looked to be in her late 30s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. "Okay, Sarah," she said. "Let's go buy you a house." 10. Maya turned the camera, and I watched as she approached a dark shape against the night sky. The A-frame. "Here we are," she said. I heard the jingle of keys, the click of a lock. Keys in the door. The door swung open. She hit the lights. My breath caught. The entire wall facing the valley was glass, floor to ceiling reflecting the darkness outside like a mirror. The ceiling soared up to a single sharp peak crossed with heavy, rough-sawn beams. Pine, light, warm, and golden, poured across the hardwood floors. "This is the main living area," Maya said, her voice echoing slightly. "The fireplace is stone floor to ceiling. Previous owners barely used it. This was an estate sale. Original owner passed away last year. Kids didn't want it. Shame, really. Beautiful bones." She walked me through the galley kitchen, dated but functional, through the downstairs bedroom. Then she climbed a spiral staircase to a loft space that looked out over the entire great room. "Guest room up here," she said. "Another one downstairs. What are you looking for weekend place investment?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "Fair enough." She went back downstairs. I heard the slide of a heavy glass door. A rush of wind filled my speaker. "This," she said, stepping outside, "is the deck." The camera panned. It was dark, but I could see the vast empty space stretching out, the railing lined with snow. A few lights glittered thousands of feet below in the valley. The deck was enormous, cantilevered out over nothing. It stared down into a valley of blue, cold, and absolute silence. I started, then stopped. "It's a lot." Maya turned the camera back to her face, snow catching in her hood. "It is. It's not a house for everyone, but the bones are good. She's solid. And if you're looking for quiet," she gestured around her at the empty darkness, "you can't do better than this." We hung up. I sat in the silence of my gray-walled condo, the laptop still open, the A-frame frozen on the screen. I closed my eyes. I asked myself the question I'd been avoiding my entire adult life. Can I picture waking up here alone and feeling safe? I pictured my childhood home in Maple Bridge, always full of people, always humming with David's needs. David's schedules, David's triumphs mounted on the walls, a place where I'd felt constantly quietly unsafe, waiting for the next eraser, the next time I'd be forgotten. Then I pictured the A-frame, the single road, the stone fireplace, the deck staring into the void, the absolute profound silence. The answer was a physical thing, a loosening in my chest, a deep, slow breath that felt like the first one I'd taken in years. Yes, but even as I felt the yes settle into my bones, another thought crept in. What if they find it? What if they show up? My family had never visited me in Harborview, not once in the 3 years I'd lived here. But something about this house, this place, felt precious in a way that made me want to protect it, to keep it hidden. I opened a new browser tab. I didn't search for mortgage brokers. Instead, I searched how to buy property anonymously. The answer came quickly: an LLC, a limited liability company. For a small filing fee, I could create a legal entity. The entity would own the house. My name wouldn't be on the deed. It wouldn't be on the utilities. It wouldn't be in any public record. I would be invisible. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my whole life being invisible to my family. Now I was choosing invisibility as a form of protection. I stayed up until 2 a.m. reading articles about LLC structures, privacy protections, asset management. By the time I closed my laptop, I had a plan. The next morning, I went online and filed the paperwork. For $300 and 20 minutes of form filling, I created Halcyon Pine LLC. Halcyon from the mythical bird that calmed the wind and waves. Pine for the trees that would guard the house. I opened a new business bank account and wired the entire $85,000 bonus plus my savings. Nearly $200,000 total. At 9:01 a.m., I called Maya. "I'm making an offer," I said. "You haven't even smelled the air up here yet," she laughed. I saw everything I needed to. "I'm making an all-cash offer, 21-day close, through my LLC. There was a pause. Then Maya's voice changed, became sharp and professional. "Okay, Sarah, let's get it done." The asking price was $340,000. I offered $330. Estate sales wanted efficiency, not haggling. They countered at $335. I stared at the email, my finger hovering over the keyboard. This was it. The click that would change everything. I typed accepted. My fingers were buzzing. For the next 3 weeks, I was a machine. I worked my full days at Redwood Meridian, my focus absolute. At night, I signed digital documents, reviewed inspection reports, arranged wire transfers. I told no one, not even my team. This was mine. While waiting for the title search, I opened the Notes app on my phone and created a new file. I typed 4 lines. A new creed for a new life. Keys mine. Address private. Mail P.O. box. Access invite only. Closing day was a Friday in late November. I signed the last document in a sterile title office in Harborview, and 3 new brass keys were placed in my hand. They felt impossibly heavy. I drove up alone that afternoon, my sedan packed light. No moving truck. Just a borrowed toolkit, 2 down pillows, a sleeping bag, and a duffel of clothes. In the passenger seat, a large thermos of black coffee, and my phone cued to a playlist I'd made called Different December. All instrumental. Cellos and quiet pianos. The sound of purpose. The sun was setting by the time I pulled up the gravel drive. The A-frame was a sharp black shadow against a bruised purple sky. I got out of the car. The cold hit me immediately, a clean, high-altitude cold that smelled like pine and snow that hadn't fallen yet. I used one of the new keys. The click of the deadbolt sliding back echoed in the silence. I stepped inside. The house was empty, cavernous, and smelled of cedar and stale air. My footsteps boomed on the hardwood floors. I stood in the center of the great room and slowly turned in a circle, taking it all in. Mine, all of it. Built by my own hands, bought with my own money, belonging to no one but me. That first night I didn't even try to set up a bed. I inflated an air mattress in the middle of the great room, threw the sleeping bag on it, and lay there facing the wall of glass and the stone fireplace. It was so cold I could see my breath fogging in the moonlight. I found the gas valve for the fireplace, and after a few tries got a line of blue flames to snap to life. The stone began to heat, but the glass wall sucked the warmth away faster than the fire could produce it. I lay there fully dressed in my sleeping bag and felt a strange hollow ache settle in my chest. It was the ache of being the only adult in the room. There was no one to call for help, no one to ask about the furnace, no one to blame if something went wrong. The safety, the warmth, the entire physical reality of the next hour, it was all my problem to solve. For the first time in my life, that knowledge didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a foundation. I fell asleep watching the flames, and my breath slowly stopped fogging. My life split in two. Weekdays, I was in Harborview, sharp-focused, leading meetings at Redwood Meridian. But at 5 p.m. on the dot every Friday, I was in my car driving the 3 hours up the mountain. I'd work on the house until I couldn't keep my eyes open, sleep on the air mattress, wake at 5 a.m., and drive back to the city. I was fueled by coffee and something deeper than adrenaline. Purpose, maybe. Or just the sheer satisfaction of building something with my own hands. Those first weeks were a blur of physical labor. The kitchen cabinets were dark cherry, dated, and oppressive. I spent an entire weekend sanding them down the sawdust, working its way into my eyelashes, my hair under my nails. My shoulders burned. But as the dark stain gave way to pale raw wood, I felt like I was stripping away more than varnish. I was exposing something new underneath, something that had been there all along, just waiting. I repainted them a soft dove gray, bought new hardware, simple matte black pulls. When I stepped back and looked at them clean and modern in the afternoon light, I felt a surge of pride so intense it almost brought me to tears. I did this. Me. Alone. Next came the lighting. The old fixtures were builder-grade brass, the kind that cast a sickly yellow glow. I bought sleek black track lighting online and spent an entire Tuesday evening on a stepladder, my arms aching, studying wiring diagrams on my phone. When I finally flipped the breaker, and the new warm white bulbs flooded the kitchen in clean light, I laughed out loud. The sound echoed in the empty house, and for a moment I felt like I was haunting my own life in the best possible way. But the most important job was the locks. The old deadbolts were flimsy things, the kind you could pop with a credit card if you knew what you were doing. I ordered heavy-duty smart locks online, the kind you could control with your phone, the kind that kept entry logs and sent alerts. Installing them took hours. I had to chisel out the door frames to fit the new reinforced strike plates. My hands cramped. I swore more than once. But when I was done, when I set the new master code and heard that decisive solid thunk of the bolt sliding into place, I felt something shift inside me. This was the sound of absolute security. The sound of a door that would not open unless I wanted it to. I stood there with my hand on the cool metal, breathing hard, and thought, no one gets in here without my permission. No one. The furniture deliveries started. A real mattress, king-sized and firm. A deep gray sofa. A coffee table. Then I ordered 2 identical simple wooden bed frames for the upstairs guest rooms. I assembled them myself, following the instructions with the methodical focus I usually reserved for client presentations. Allen wrench. Small hammer. Every bolt tightened precisely. These weren't rooms for a family I was obligated to host. These weren't shrines to someone else's achievements mounted on the walls and dusted reverently. I was building these beds with my own hands because I wanted to choose who got to stay. I wanted to build a place for people who, like me, had spent too many holidays feeling like afterthoughts. I made the beds with flannel sheets and thick duvets. I stood in the doorway of the first finished guest room and just breathed. This is a place where people are welcome, but only the people I invite. The deck became my obsession. One night, clear and freezing, I took 300 feet of warm white string lights and wound them around the entire railing. It took hours. My fingers went numb. I had to keep going inside to run them under warm water, flexing them until the feeling came back. But when I was done, when I plugged in the extension cord and the deck glowed in the pitch black of the mountain, I understood why I'd bought this place. It looked like a ship floating in the dark, like a beacon. I stood there with a mug of tea in my hands and looked down into the valley. It was vast and dark, a few distant lights twinkling like stars. I thought about the map I'd seen, the way the valley curved like a sleeping animal, and my home. My home was a small, warm light watching over it. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was the light. The house was ready for a test. I needed to know if it could hold joy or if it was just a fortress. If the walls I'd built were shelter or prison. I invited Priya, Marcus, and Liv up for a trial weekend. They arrived on a Friday night, stomping snow off their boots, their arms full of board games and grocery bags. "We brought ingredients for your grandma's chili," Priya announced, holding up a bundle of celery. "Marcus is on vegetable duty. Liv's doing cornbread." My kitchen, my clean, repainted, brightly lit kitchen, filled with noise. The sound of chopping, sizzling onions. 3 people arguing happily over which board game to play first. We ate sitting on the floor around the coffee table because my dining table hadn't arrived yet. And then we played. Card games and board games and stupid party games that made no sense. Laughter real and loud and unrestrained ricocheted off the high-beamed ceiling. It was proof. Soft, warm proof. This house could hold it. This house could hold us. The next morning I sat on the deck with my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the valley in shades of pink and gold. Priya came out wrapped in a blanket and sat beside me in silence. We didn't speak for 10 minutes. Finally she said, "Sarah, this place is magic." Before they left, I gave Grandma Helen her official tour via FaceTime, walking through the house with my phone camera. She oohed and awed over the cabinets, laughed at the ribbon candy backsplash tile the previous owners had left. When I showed her the view from the deck, she whistled low. "Well," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You did it, kiddo. You really did it. You built your own mountain." "Thanks, Grandma." "I'm proud of you, Sarah." My throat went tight. "It's a start." That night, after my friends had gone and the house was quiet again, I felt a new kind of peace. The silence wasn't empty. It was full, charged with the memory of laughter. I curled up on the sofa by the fire and opened my private Instagram, the one I kept for just myself and 47 close friends. No family, just coworkers, college friends, a few people from high school I still kept in touch with. I scrolled through my camera roll and selected 3 photos. The first, the deck at dawn that morning. Fog settled in the valley below like an ocean of clouds, the sun just breaking over the far ridge. The second, my favorite mug full of coffee resting on the arm of the sofa, the stone hearth blurred warm in the background. The third, just a corner of the fireplace, flames bright and welcoming. I thought about the caption for a long time. Finally, I typed 5 simple words. Bought myself a quiet place. I hit post. Then I turned off my phone and went to sleep. I woke the next morning to silence. Glorious, complete silence. The kind that comes from being 3 hours away from the city, surrounded by pine trees and snow, and nothing else. I'd slept 9 solid hours. Dreamless, deep sleep. The kind I hadn't had since I was a child. I made coffee in the kitchen, the morning light pouring through the windows in golden shafts. I felt for the first time in my adult life completely settled, like all the pieces had finally clicked into place. Then I turned my phone back on. The screen lit up and kept lighting up. Notification after notification stacking on top of each other, the phone vibrating in my hand like an angry hornet. All from the same source, Mitchell Family Updates. This was the group chat. The digital graveyard where my father occasionally posted articles about bond yields, where aunts I barely knew shared blurry photos of their gardens. It was almost always dormant silent for weeks at a time. Today, it was on fire. My stomach dropped. I opened the chat. The most recent message, the one that had triggered the avalanche, was from my mother, posted 16 minutes ago. But it wasn't a text, it was a screenshot. My Instagram post. The deck at dawn. The caption, "Bought myself a quiet place." Someone, probably my mother, had screenshotted my private post and pasted it directly into the family group chat. The messages came rapid fire. Aunt Deborah, whose house is this? It's beautiful, Cousin Lisa. Where did you go, Sarah? The mountains, Uncle Tom. Very nice. And then the one that made my blood run cold. Mom Jennifer, exciting news, everyone. Perfect timing. David and Emily need so much more space with the baby coming and their lease is up. We'll bring their nursery things up this Friday. So blessed I read it again. And again. We'll bring their nursery things up this Friday. Not Sarah, congratulations on your new home. Not would you ever consider helping your brother. Not even can we talk about this. Just we'll bring their things Friday. Past tense. Decided. Done. My new house, the one I had paid for with 6 months of 60-hour work weeks, the one I had sanded and painted and secured with my own aching hands, had just been declared a colony for the Republic of David. Before I could even process, my father chimed in. Dad Richard, generally prudent to consult family before purchases of this magnitude. Sarah, we need to discuss tax implications and liability. We, not you. And then the final perfect punctuation, David, followed immediately by a photo. A picture taken inside a storage unit. Dozens of flattened cardboard boxes stacked high. Scrawled across the top one in thick black marker, nursery. I set the phone down on the counter very carefully. My heart should have been hammering. But it wasn't. It was steady, cold, analytical. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an annexation. They'd seen my quiet place, my hard-won peace, and in the space of 10 minutes they'd rezoned it as David's annex. They were already packing. My phone buzzed again. A solo text this time, not in the group chat. From Mom. Mom, Sarah, I'm so glad we're all on the same page. Such a relief. Now Christmas is at your place, that's settled, non-negotiable. We can't wait to see it. Don't worry about a thing, we'll cover all the groceries. Non-negotiable. The offer to cover groceries was the master stroke. The classic Mitchell maneuver, make an outrageous invasive demand, then soften it with a petty offer of generosity. As if paying for a turkey gave them rights to my deed. I sat there in my beautiful kitchen in my house of warm light and careful boundaries and thought about all the ways I could respond. All the soft phrases I'd been trained to use. I'm sorry that doesn't really work for me. Maybe we can talk about it. I'm not ready for guests. I deleted them all. I typed 3 words no. I've made other plans. I hit send. The blue bubble sat there in the chat history, stark and final. It was the heaviest 3-word sentence I'd ever written. The phone rang within 2 minutes. Dad Richard Mitchell lit up the screen. I let it ring twice. I took one slow breath, tasting the peppermint from my morning tea. I pressed accept. Hello? I said. Not hi, Dad. Just hello. Sarah. His voice was the one he used for board meetings. Calm, reasonable. The voice that implied everyone else was being hysterical. I just saw your text to your mother. She's very upset. I waited. Silence was my turf now. In my house. This isn't a game, he continued when I didn't immediately apologize. Your brother's lease is ending. You went and bought a 3-bedroom house. It's simple resource alignment. Be useful, Sarah. Be useful. Not be kind. Not be generous. Not be family. Be useful. I wasn't his daughter. I was a resource. A line item. A spare bedroom in the family's expanding portfolio. I kept my voice perfectly even, matching his corporate chill. I understand David's situation. However, my house is not a solution for him. No one is moving in. That is final. There was a sharp, cold silence. I had never spoken to him like this. I had never used the word final. I heard him huff a short, sharp sound of pure offense. He wasn't angry. He was insulted. We'll see about this, Sarah, he said. The line clicked dead. He'd hung up on me. My hands were no longer cold. They were moving. I went back to the group chat. Screenshot. I went to my mother's solo text. Screenshot. My 3-word reply. Screenshot. I opened my call log, incoming call from Richard Mitchell. Duration 134. Screenshot. I opened the secure folder on my cloud drive, the one I used for work contracts. I created a new encrypted subfolder. I named it Deck Boundaries. I uploaded every single image. This wasn't a family disagreement. This was a hostile takeover. The phone rang again almost immediately. This time it was Grandma Helen. I let out the breath I'd been holding and answered. Hi, Grandma. I just got off the phone with your mother. No preamble. Grandma Helen never wasted time on preamble. She's in hysterics, crying. Says you bought a mansion in the mountains and you've locked her out. Says you won't even let them come for Christmas. I posted one photo last night, Grandma, I said, my voice flat. Within an hour, they'd decided without asking me to move David and Emily in on Friday. Grandma Helen made a sound. It was a short, sharp snort of pure derision. Of course they did. A vacuum hates to be empty, and your family hates to see you have a single thing that isn't somehow for them. I felt something loosen in my chest. She saw it. She saw them. Don't let them bully you, kiddo, she continued. You don't owe them a holiday. You don't owe them a spare room. And you sure as hell don't owe them an explanation for your own life. She paused. I heard the clink of ice in a glass. But I know them, she said, her voice going quiet and serious. They'll drive up anyway. Your parents, they think no is just a suggestion. They think it's an opening offer in a negotiation they always win. So let me be very clear with you, Sarah. If those cars pull up your driveway, you do not open that door. You lock it. You check that it's locked. And you call the local sheriff. You tell them you have uninvited trespassers on your property. You understand me? The words sheriff and trespassers hung in the cold pine air of my living room. It was a shocking, brutal escalation. And at the same time, it was the most profound validation I'd ever received. I understand, Grandma. Good. Now send me a picture of that ribbon candy backsplash. I want to see it for myself. We hung up. I looked out the glass wall at the valley, vast and silent. The dread was still there, a cold knot in my stomach. But it wasn't panic. It was the cold, clear-headed focus of a strategist on the first day of a very long, very necessary campaign. They had made their move. Now it was my turn. I didn't go back to Harborview that Sunday. I called in sick on Monday, the first sick day I'd taken in 2 years. I stayed in the mountain house, and I did what I do best. I strategized. Grandma's words echoed, call the sheriff. But I knew you didn't just call the sheriff. You didn't make a panicked, hysterical call that could be dismissed as a family spat. You built the groundwork first. You prepared the field. You presented them with a set of facts so cold and hard they couldn't be argued, only acknowledged. I opened my laptop and searched high timber property litigation attorney. The first result was a firm called Stone Legal. The website was minimalist, all gray and black, with sharp, high-resolution photos of granite and ice. The tagline, clarity, strategy, resolution. The head attorney's name was Victoria Stone. I called her office at 9 a.m. The receptionist put me on hold for less than 10 seconds. Victoria Stone. Her voice was like her website, clear cold, carrying no inflection. Ms. Stone, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I am the new owner of the property at Kestrel Ridge under the LLC Halcyon Pine. I need a consultation regarding trespass and occupancy rights. I'm available today. There was quiet tapping of a keyboard. I can see you at 2 p.m. Bring your LLC operating agreement and your deed. The line clicked. I spent the next 4 hours organizing my deck boundaries folder. I printed everything. The group chat texts, my mother's non-negotiable demand, the photo David had sent of the boxes marked nursery. I put them in a crisp black folder. Victoria Stone's office was on the main street of high timber above a high-end outdoor gear shop. The building was old brick, but inside the office was sleek and modern. The walls were deep charcoal. No family photos, no diplomas. Just 2 large abstract paintings of winter forests. Victoria herself was a woman in her mid-40s, tall and lean in a dark wool dress. Her hair was pulled back severely. She didn't offer to shake my hand. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Ms. Mitchell, you have a property issue. I have a family issue that is attempting to become a property issue, I said. I placed the black folder on her polished desk. My family believes they are moving into my new home on Friday. I do not want them there. I told her the story. 5 concise minutes. The history of erasure. The purchase of the house through the LLC. The Instagram post. The deluge of texts. She read every screenshot. Her expression did not change. She did not tisk or sigh or offer sympathy. She was a scientist examining data. When she finished, she looked up at me. Her gaze was analytical, measuring. This is not, she said, an uncommon story up here. Money entitlement and second homes, it's a combustible mix. She tapped the screenshot from my mother. This is presumptive. She tapped the photo from David. This is complicity. She tapped my father's text. And this is an attempt at economic coercion. I felt a sudden dizzying wave of relief. She hadn't called me dramatic. She hadn't said, "But it's your family." She had diagnosed the threat with surgical precision. "You have two things in your favor, Ms. Mitchell," she continued. "First, you were incredibly smart to purchase under the LLC. Halcyon Pine owns the house. You are merely its managing member. This provides a crucial layer of legal distance. Second, you have given them clear written notice of no. Your position is unambiguous." "What's the next step?" I asked. "We're going to file a formal no trespass letter with the county sheriff's office effective immediately. It will name Richard Mitchell, Jennifer Mitchell, and David Mitchell. It will be recorded against your parcel number." She pulled out a legal pad and began writing in sharp, precise handwriting. "This way," she said, not looking up. "If you do have to call, you are not a hysterical daughter. You are the representative of an LLC reporting a violation of a recorded legal notice. The police hate ambiguity. We are going to remove it." For the next hour, we built the fortress. We drafted the letter. It was polite, formal, and terrifying. It cited the parcel number and the name of the LLC. It stated that the named individuals were not permitted on the property at any time and that their presence would be considered criminal trespass. "I'll have this filed and recorded by 4 p.m. today," Victoria said, sliding it into a file. "A copy will be sent to the sheriff's duty desk." "What else?" I asked. She looked at me, and for the first time something like approval flickered in her eyes. "You're a strategist, Ms. Mitchell, so you know the next step is reinforcing your perimeter." I drove from her office straight to the hardware store in the next town over. I bought another heavy-duty strike plate, a box of 3-inch wood screws, and a second trail camera. Back at the A-frame, I began my own practical checklist. I logged into the admin panel for my exterior cameras. I angled the driveway camera to get a perfect shot of the gravel approach and any license plates. I angled the porch camera to capture every inch of the front door. I enabled audio recording. I downloaded the entry log app that synced with my smart locks, giving me a second-by-second record of every code, tried every failed attempt. Then I opened a new document and typed guest policy, Halcyon Pine LLC. 1. All guests are permitted by written invitation only with specific dates. 2. No invitation shall be considered standing or open-ended. 3. No subletting, cohabitating, or mail forwarding is permitted. 4. Any attempt to access the property without an authorized code or key will be logged and reported. It was cold. Corporate. Perfect. I printed it on heavy cream-colored cardstock and posted it inside the front entry closet, the one where an invited guest might hang their coat. My defenses were layered now. First, the LLC. Second, the physical defenses. Third, the legal defense, the no trespass letter filed and waiting. Now came the declaration. I sat at my dining table and opened my email. I started a new message and typed in 3 email addresses. Richard, Jennifer, David. In the BCC field, I added Victoria Stone. Subject line Christmas plans. Kestrel Ridge property, I wrote. Dear Richard, Jennifer, and David, thank you for your interest regarding my new property. To clarify the situation and ensure there is no misunderstanding, the house is not available for visits or hosting this holiday season. It is a private residence and is not open for guests, nor is it available for anyone to move into. I have already made other private plans for the Christmas holiday. Please do not travel to High Timber, as I will be unable to accommodate you. Any attempts to access the property will be denied. I trust this clarifies the situation. I did not write Love Sarah. I wrote Sincerely Sarah Mitchell, Managing Member Halcyon Pine, LLC. I hit send. The silence that followed was immediate and profound. My phone, which had been vibrating with their demands all weekend, went completely dead. The group chat was a tomb. It was the sound of the ocean pulling all the way back, gathering its strength before the wave. 2 days passed. Silence. I went back to work in Harborview on Tuesday, telling my team I'd had a stomach bug. Priya gave me a concerned look, but didn't press. I worked. I answered emails. I attended meetings. But underneath my professional veneer, I was waiting. Watching. On Wednesday evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Priya. Priya, Sarah. You should probably see this. Your mom just posted on Facebook. My stomach dropped. I opened Facebook, navigated to my mother's profile, something I rarely did. She posted constantly a curated stream of garden photos, inspirational quotes, and humble brags about David's accomplishments. The new post was at the top, posted 30 minutes ago. Public. Feeling so blessed this Christmas morning, it began. But it wasn't Christmas. It was early December. After so many challenges, we are thrilled to announce a true Christmas miracle. David and Emily have found the perfect safe place to start their family. We've been working on it for weeks, and we're so grateful it's all coming together for them. Moving day is just around the corner. Here's a peek at the nursery mood board they've been working on. Below the text was a slick Pinterest-style image. Soft blues and grays. A crib, a changing table, a rocking chair. All very tasteful, very expensive looking. And in the corner, tagged as a location, High Timber Elkrest Range. Not my exact address, but close enough. A dog whistle. The comments were already rolling in. A Christmas miracle indeed, so happy for them. What a beautiful place to raise a baby. They deserve this, congratulations. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. This wasn't a retreat. This was a flanking maneuver. They'd been turned away via email, my clear professional corporate no. So now they were building a public narrative. A narrative in which they were the heroes. The benevolent parents securing a safe place for their children. A narrative in which my house was not mine, but coming together for them. My phone buzzed again. This time a direct message on Instagram. From someone I hadn't heard from in years. Melissa Carter, a girl I'd known in high school back in Maple Bridge. Melissa, hey Sarah. Weird question. I saw your post about the mountain house. It looks amazing. Just wanted to let you know. I was at my parents' country club last week, and I overheard your dad talking at the bar. He was asking around for anyone who knew a good mountain property management service in the Elkrest area. He was specifically using your parcel number, saying his kids had a new property and he needed someone to manage the tenants and upkeep. It was weird. Anyway, Merry Christmas. Hope you're well. I read the message twice. Manage the tenants. Upkeep. His kids. Plural. I looked up at the ceiling of my Harborview apartment and laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of sound with no humor in it. They hadn't just ignored my no. They were executing a multi-pronged strategy to overcome it. Social media building public expectation. Behind the scenes trying to install a property manager who could give them access and control. I saved the screenshot of my mother's Facebook post. I saved Melissa's DM. I forwarded everything to Victoria Stone with the subject line, Phase 2. Her reply came within minutes. Victoria noted, do not respond to the Facebook post. Do not engage on social media. Let them build their narrative. It will work against them. Document everything. We'll talk Friday. I closed my laptop. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from cold crystalline rage. Friday morning, I woke early in my Harborview apartment. I hadn't been able to sleep. At 6 a.m., I gave up and made coffee. My phone buzzed. An email from Victoria, time-stamped 5:47 a.m. Subject urgent. Check county records. The body of the email was short, Sarah. I set up alerts on your LLC and parcel number with county agencies. We got a ping overnight. Check the county clerk's online portal. Call me after you look. My hands went cold. I opened my laptop and navigated to the county clerk's public records portal, the same one Victoria and I had used to file the no trespass letter. I logged into my account and searched for my parcel number. There, filed at 9:14 p.m., the previous night, was a new document. Change of address request. USPS Form 3575. I clicked it open. My vision tunneled. It was a request to forward all mail for David Mitchell and Emily Mitchell from their Connecticut address to my P.O. box in High Timber. The request was dated 2 days ago before my email telling them not to come, before I'd even sent the clear no. Status pending verification. They had filed this preemptively. They had already made the move to legally attach themselves to my address. If that verification went through, they could use it to get driver's licenses here, to register their car, to claim residency, to establish tenancy. The locksmith and the smoked ham, those weren't the real plan. Those were just shock and awe. This was the real invasion. I grabbed my phone and called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. You saw it, she said. They filed a change of address, I said, my voice shaking. 2 days ago, before I even told them no. Premeditation, Victoria said crisply. This is good for us. It shows planning, intent. Keep looking, there's more. More, check the DMV alert I forwarded. I pulled up my email. There it was, sent at 6:02 a.m. DMV alert. Vehicle registration attempt. I opened the attachment. It was a flagged application from the Department of Motor Vehicles. Applicant David Mitchell, Vehicle 2024, Subaru Outback address. My parcel number, Kestrel Ridge High Timber. He had tried to register his car to my house. To my house. Status rejected. Address owner does not match applicant. He tried to register his car to my address. I said, my voice hollow. He did, and when they asked for proof of address, guess what he provided? I don't know. A lease agreement, Victoria said. We don't have a copy yet, but I'm willing to bet it's forged. They're building a paper trail, Sarah, documents that prove they have rights to the property. If enough of these documents get through the cracks, they can claim de facto tenancy. I felt sick. What do we do? I asked. We go on offense, Victoria said. I'm drafting a comprehensive cease and desist. 20 pages. It will be sent via certified mail signature required to Richard, Jennifer, and David individually. It will list every illegal action they've attempted: mail fraud, vehicle registration fraud, attempted identity theft. And I'm filing fraud alerts with every county and state agency, post office, DMV utilities. Your accounts will be frozen to all changes. No one can modify anything without a verbal password known only to you and me. When? I asked. Today. I'll have everything filed by 5 p.m., but Sarah, what time? They're going to escalate. This is the behavior of people who don't believe in consequences. When they receive the cease and desist, they won't back down. They'll get more desperate. I understand. Good. Stay alert. And Sarah, don't go up to the mountain alone this weekend. We hung up. I sat in my apartment staring at the wall. The December sunlight was thin and cold through the windows. They weren't just trying to take my house. They were trying to erase me from it, to replace me with a paper version of myself, a compliant Sarah who had agreed to all of this. I opened my phone and went to my settings, to the lock screen, to the emergency contacts. It had been the same for 10 years. ICE 1 mom, ICE 2 dad, the reflexive childhood programming. If I was broken, bleeding unconscious on the side of a road, they were the ones to call. But they weren't. They were the emergency. I pressed delete. Mom disappeared. I pressed delete again. Dad disappeared. The list was empty. I tapped add new contact and scrolled until I found the entry I'd made that morning. ICE Victoria Stone. I saved it. My family was no longer my safety net. They were the fall. I drove up to the mountain house that Friday evening despite Victoria's warning. I couldn't stay away. The house felt vulnerable, like a living thing that needed me. When I arrived, the evening was clear and cold, the stars just beginning to appear. I turned on all the lights, checked all the locks, reviewed the camera footage. Nothing. Just wind and snow and silence. I made dinner pasta with olive oil and garlic, simple and warm. I ate on the sofa by the fire, and for a moment I let myself believe it was over, that the cease and desist would be enough, that they would finally understand. Then my phone buzzed. An email from Victoria, timestamped 8:34 p.m. Subject: you need to see this. The body, Sarah. Another document appeared in the county records an hour ago. They filed it remotely. You need to look at this immediately. Call me after. I opened my laptop with trembling hands. The document was titled Informal Family Tenancy Agreement, dated 2 weeks ago, before my Instagram post, before I'd even finished furnishing the house. It was a simple, badly formatted document typed on what looked like a home computer. It stated that Halcyon Pine LLC, in consideration of family unity and support, granted full-time indefinite tenancy to David Mitchell and Emily Mitchell for the property at Kestrel Ridge. And at the bottom, in the signature line for the LLC's managing member, was a signature. Sarah M. Mitchell. My vision blurred. I zoomed in on the signature. It was looping feminine, completely unlike my actual handwriting. And the middle initial was wrong. I don't have a middle initial. My name is Sarah Ann Mitchell. No middle name, just Ann as a second first name that I never use. They had forged my signature, and they had invented a middle initial to do it. They had created a fictional person, Sarah M. Mitchell, who consented to their invasion. I called Victoria. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. You saw it, she said when she answered. They forged my signature, I whispered. They made up a middle initial. I don't have a middle initial. I know, That's actually good for us. It proves forgery beyond any doubt. This isn't a family disagreement anymore, Sarah. This is a felony. Document fraud. Attempted theft by deception. What do? We file an emergency motion. First thing Monday morning. I'm petitioning for a temporary protective order. If granted, any further contact from them, physical, digital, or via third parties, becomes a criminal violation. They will be legally barred from coming within 500 feet of your property or contacting you in any way. Will it work? With this evidence, yes. A judge will see this forgery and understand exactly what we're dealing with. But Sarah, what Monday is 4 days away. If they're this desperate, this brazen, they might not wait. I looked out the dark window at my deck at the string lights glowing warm against the night. I'll be ready, I said. I hope so. Lock your doors, keep your phone charged. And Sarah, if they show up, and I mean if not when, but if you call 911 first, then you call me, in that order. Understood? Understood. We hung up. I stood and walked through the house, checking every lock again. The front door, the side door, the sliding glass door to the deck. All secure, all reinforced, all logged. I went to my laptop and created a new document. I wrote down everything. The timeline, the screenshots, the forged tenancy agreement, the mail fraud attempt, the vehicle registration fraud, everything. I saved it in 3 places, my laptop, the cloud, and a USB drive that I put in my purse. Then I made myself a cup of peppermint tea and sat by the fire. The house creaked and settled around me. Outside, the wind moved through the pines with a sound like the ocean. I was alone on this mountain, but I was not defenseless, and I was done being invisible. End of part 2. The alert woke me at 2:11 a.m. I'd installed the second trail camera at the community mailbox cluster half a mile down the mountain road from my house. I'd set a geofence alert. If anything crossed that perimeter, my phone would scream. And now it was screaming. I was out of bed before I was fully conscious, my heart slamming against my ribs. The screen was blindingly bright in the dark bedroom. Geofence alert, perimeter breach, mailbox cluster. I opened the trail cam app with shaking fingers. The feed was grainy, washed in the alien green of night vision, but the image was undeniable. A dark sedan idling on the gravel shoulder next to the community mailbox cluster. Its engine was a faint rumble in the silence. The driver's door opened. My father stepped out. He wasn't in one of his usual suits. He was wearing a dark coat, his face pale and grim in the infrared light. He looked around up the road, down the road, checking to see if anyone was watching. He thought he was invisible. He walked directly to my P.O. box, box number 42. He had a stack of thick white business envelopes in his hand. He didn't have a key. He didn't need one. One by one, he forced them through the narrow mail slot, jamming them into the locked box. It was a violation, a physical act of force. He was planting evidence, creating a paper trail that would show he had delivered documents to me. He jammed the last envelope through, smoothed his coat, and got back in the car. The sedan pulled away, its taillights vanishing down the mountain pass. I stood in my dark bedroom, the phone still glowing in my hand, and did not go back to bed. I sat on the sofa wrapped in a blanket and watched the clock. The house was silent, but the air was screaming. At 6 a.m., just as the sky was turning gray, I put on my boots and parka. I drove the half-mile down to the mailbox cluster. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe. I stood in front of box 42, my key in the lock. It stuck, blocked by the wad of paper inside. I forced it. The small metal door swung open and they spilled out into my hands. 3 thick white envelopes, not addressed, just folded with Sarah Mitchell, written on the outside in my father's precise handwriting. I sat in my car with the engine running for warmth and opened the first one. Household member affidavit. It was a form addressed to my insurance company. A declaration stating that David Mitchell and Emily Mitchell were now full-time residents of the property at Kestrel Ridge and were to be added to my homeowner's policy as additional household members. At the bottom, signed Richard Mitchell, property manager, not father, not concerned parent, property manager. I opened the second envelope. This one was addressed to High Timber Homeowners Association, a body that did not exist. He was inventing bureaucracies just so he could file paperwork with them. The third was a letter typed and signed by him informing me that as property manager, he had taken these steps to ensure the security and insurance of the asset on behalf of the family stakeholders. Asset. Stakeholders. I was not his daughter. The house was not my home. We were line items in a corporate portfolio. I took high-resolution photographs of every page. Then I opened the TrailCam app and downloaded the video file timestamped 2/11/2/13 a.m. I watched it again. My father alone on a dark road at 2 in the morning, stuffing fraudulent documents into my mailbox. I opened a new email to Victoria. Subject urgent, 2:11 a.m., breach Victoria. He planted these in my P.O. box at 2:11 this morning. I have the video. He is actively manufacturing evidence. What is our move? I attached the video. I attached the photos. I hit send. The reply came before I'd even put the car in drive. Victoria, this is the last piece. He's creating his own evidence loop planting and will now discover his own paperwork. This is the act of a criminal, not a father. I am filing the emergency motion now, attaching video and affidavit. He is done. I drove back to the house. My whole body was humming with cold, clear energy. At 11:52 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Victoria emergency motion filed. County clerk stamped it before noon. The petition for protective order is now active and on a judge's desk. The next time they breathe on you, it will be executed. Stand by. I stood by. At 12:05 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A text from a number I hadn't blocked but hadn't heard from in days. My mother. Mom, we tried everything the nice way, Sarah. You left us no choice. The nice way. The locksmith. The screaming. The forged tenancy agreement. The 2 a.m. covert operation. That was their nice way. I didn't reply. I screenshotted the text and forwarded it to Victoria. Her response acknowledged. Added to petition as direct threat. Do not reply. I silenced the thread. Then I sat at my kitchen table and looked out at the valley white with fresh snow and waited for the wave to break. Turning the snow on the deck pink and gold. I was alone in the house. I'd told my team at work I was taking the week off for the holidays, the first real vacation I'd taken in 3 years. Priya had offered to come up, but I'd declined. I needed to face this alone. I made a pot of coffee. I checked the cameras. I reviewed the entry logs. Everything was quiet. At 7:42 p.m., I was sitting by the fire with a book in my lap when the notification came. Motion detected. Driveway. I set the book down very carefully. My heart didn't leap. It just began to beat with a slow, heavy, deliberate rhythm. I opened the camera app. 2 headlights slicing through the dark, creeping up my gravel drive. They weren't moving fast. They were moving with purpose. A large, dark SUV. It stopped 20 feet from the house. Doors opened. My mother, Jennifer, emerged from the passenger side, pulling her coat tight against the cold. My father, Richard, got out from the driver's side, standing stiffly as he surveyed the house. From the back, David unfolding himself, already reaching for luggage. And Emily, very pregnant, moving with the slow, pained caution of her 3rd trimester. They had brought suitcases, 4 of them. David set them on the gravel, then reached back into the SUV and pulled out a collapsible crib. He snapped it open with a practiced flick of his wrist. And then a 5th person got out. A man in a work jacket I didn't recognize. He was carrying a long metal toolbox. He looked cold. He looked embarrassed. They had brought a locksmith. My family had arrived with suitcases, a crib, and a man they'd hired to break into my home. Motion detected. Porch. They were walking toward my front door. The doorbell chimed. That sharp digital sound echoed through the warm, quiet house. I didn't get up. I didn't go to the door. I pressed the talk button on the app. My voice, amplified by the tiny speaker on the porch, cut through the freezing night air. It sounded metallic. Inhuman. This is private property. Entry is not authorized. Please leave. My mother flinched. She looked around confused before realizing the voice was coming from the doorbell itself. She rushed toward the camera, her face looming large and distorted. Sarah, honey, open up. It's freezing out here. Don't be silly. We drove for hours. We brought a smoked ham. A ham. As if it were a password. The price of admission. I watched in silence. My father gestured impatiently at the door. It's the smart lock. The black one. The locksmith sighed, knelt down, and began unpacking his tools. He pulled out a drill. That was the line. My fingers were cold but perfectly steady. I went to my phone's contact list and pressed the entry for High Timber Sheriff non-emergency line. County Dispatch. Hello? I said, my voice low and clear. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I am the managing member of Halcyon Pine LLC located at Kestrel Ridge. I am reporting an active trespass. I have a filed no trespass letter record number 309B for this parcel. The individuals named in the letter, Richard Mitchell, Jennifer Mitchell, and David Mitchell, are currently on my front porch. I paused, then delivered the critical fact. They have brought a locksmith and are at this moment attempting to drill my deadbolt. There was a sharp change in the dispatcher's tone. They are actively attempting entry, ma'am. Are you safe inside the house? I am safe. The doors are reinforced, but they are trespassing and attempting to destroy property. A patrol car is en route. Your parcel number is on file. Please stay inside and do not engage. I hung up. I went back to the camera app. The locksmith was working his drill, whining against the reinforced metal. It wasn't budging. David, all pent-up frustration, stepped forward. He banged his fist hard against the door frame. The sound vibrated through the floor of my house, a dull physical thud. Sarah, he yelled, stop being dramatic. We're here. The plan is set. Just open the door. I saw Emily wince, a sharp pained tightening of her face. She was standing back by the suitcases, one hand on her belly. She whispered something too quiet for the microphone to catch, but her expression was clear. Please stop. Please. David ignored her. He raised his fist to bang again, and then the world lit up in red and blue. A patrol car crunched over the gravel, its headlights pinning the entire group in harsh white light. They froze. The locksmith dropped his drill. A deputy stepped out of the car. Tall, his hat pulled low. He did not look amused. He walked calmly onto the porch. Good evening, folks. Quite a party. What seems to be the problem here? My mother instantly transformed. Hands clasped at her chest, worried mother face fully activated. Oh, thank goodness, officer, this is all a terrible misunderstanding. This is our daughter's house. We drove all this way for Christmas and she's not well. She's locked herself in. We're just trying to get to her. We're so worried. The deputy looked at my mother, looked at the suitcases, looked at the crib, looked at the locksmith's scattered tools. I see, he said slowly. I'm going to need to see identification from all of you, please. My father stiffened. I don't see why that's necessary. This is a family matter. I see a property matter, sir. Identification. Now. One by one, they handed over their driver's licenses. The deputy examined each one under his flashlight. Richard Mitchell, Jennifer Mitchell, David Mitchell. He turned to Emily. And you, ma'am? Emily Mitchell, she whispered, her eyes wide. The deputy nodded. He pulled out his clipboard. Well, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I know exactly what's going on here. He tapped his clipboard with one gloved finger. The bad news is this property is not owned by Sarah Mitchell. It is owned by a corporation, Halcyon Pine LLC, and I have a legally filed recorded no trespass letter from the LLC's counsel specifically barring Richard, Jennifer, and David Mitchell from this parcel. The silence was absolute. My mother's face collapsed. The performance was over. An LLC, that's just paperwork. I am her mother. Ma'am, the deputy said, his voice devoid of sympathy. There is no such thing as family rights when it comes to criminal trespass. This is private property. You were formally warned not to come here. He turned to the locksmith. And you, were you aware that these individuals were not the owners and had no right to be here? The locksmith was packing his toolbox so fast he was nearly throwing tools in. No, sir, he gestured at my father. Told me it was his daughter's house, that she was indisposed, they were locked out. I'm done. I'm leaving. He grabbed his box and practically ran to his van. My father stepped forward, voice low and dangerous. This is outrageous. This is harassment. You will be hearing from our lawyers. The deputy didn't blink. That is your right, sir. You can call any lawyer you like, but you'll be calling them from a hotel, because tonight you are leaving. He reached back into his patrol car and pulled out a large manila envelope. Here is your copy of the recorded notice. It explains in detail that if you return to this property, you will be arrested. If you attempt to contact the owner tonight, it may be considered harassment. So I'm going to stand here and watch you load your suitcases and your crib back into your vehicle. And then you are going to leave. It was checkmate. David looked like he was vibrating with rage, but he said nothing. Richard snatched the envelope. Jennifer looked small and cold and for the first time in my life completely powerless. Wordlessly, they picked up their luggage. David grabbed the crib and folded it. They loaded the SUV in tense, furious silence. They got in. Doors slammed. The engine roared. The taillights, red and angry, disappeared down the ridge road. The deputy got back into his patrol car and followed them, ensuring they left the mountain. I stood in the center of my living room. The silence that rushed back in was massive. The only sound was the crackle of the fire. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. The adrenaline, the cold, steady courage I'd been running on for days, drained out of me all at once. I gripped the back of the sofa to steady myself. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since I was 10 years old. I looked out the great glass wall. The valley was a pool of black. And then a single perfect snowflake drifted past the deck light. Then another. And another. The snow was starting. I felt something settle in my chest. Not quite relief. More like closure. Thank you, Victoria. You did the work, Sarah. I just filed the paperwork. We hung up and I looked around my house, my sanctuary, my fortress, but I didn't want to spend New Year's Eve alone. I called Priya. Are you free tomorrow night? I'm having a small gathering. Hot cocoa and chili. Very informal. We're there, she said immediately. All of us. I called my neighbors, Tom and Susan. I sent a text to Liv and Marcus. By 7 p.m. on New Year's Eve, my house was full of laughter and warmth and noise, full of people I had chosen, people who had chosen me back. At one point, standing in my kitchen, stirring the pot of chili while Priya set out mugs for hot cocoa, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Home. This was home. Not the house in Maple Bridge with its perfect lawn and its shrine to David. Not the cold apartment in Harborview where I'd hidden from my own life. This messy, loud, warm gathering of people who saw me. At midnight, we stood on the deck under the string lights, bundled in coats and scarves, and counted down. 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year. We cheered, we hugged, we raised our mugs of spiked hot chocolate to the cold, clear sky. And I realized I had won. Not just the legal battle, not just the house. I had won myself back. 2 months later, on a mild February afternoon, I was sitting on the deck with a mug of tea when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Sarah. The voice was hesitant. Female. It's Emily. David's wife. I sat up straighter. Emily. Her voice cracked. I had the baby. A girl. Luna. I wanted you to know. There was a long silence. I could hear a baby fussing in the background. I'm sorry, Emily said, the words tumbling out. I'm so sorry for everything, for going along with it, for not standing up sooner. David and we're in therapy. I don't know if we'll make it, but I had to call. You deserved better. You deserved so much better. My throat went tight. Thank you for calling, Emily. I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad Luna is here. Me too, she whispered. Take care, Sarah. You too. We hung up. I sat there for a long time looking out at the valley. The snow was melting now, revealing patches of brown earth and green pine. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever. But it was acknowledgement. And sometimes that's enough. That evening I had dinner with Grandma Helen. She'd driven up to visit for the weekend, and we sat at my dining table, the one I'd finally bought, eating takeout Thai food and laughing. You know, she said, setting down her fork, I owe you an apology. I looked at her surprised. For what? For not doing this for your mother. For not teaching her to set boundaries, to stand up for herself. She looked down at her hands. I stayed quiet when I should have roared. I thought being small would keep her safe. All it did was make her cruel. Grandma, no, let me finish. I see now what I should have done. And I'm grateful, so grateful that you figured it out on your own, that you didn't make my mistakes. I reached across the table and took her hand. You're teaching me different now. That's what matters. She squeezed my fingers. Better late than never, kiddo. By summer, the house had become what I'd always wanted it to be, a sanctuary. Liv moved into one of the guest rooms for 3 months while she was between jobs. Priya and Marcus came up every other weekend. I started a small wildflower garden on the side of the house. The A-frame was no longer a fortress. It was a home, a place where people were welcome, but only the people I invited. One evening in late July, I was sitting on the deck with a mug of peppermint tea, watching the sunset paint the valley in shades of orange and pink when my phone buzzed. A text from Victoria, "How are you holding up?" I smiled and typed back, "I'm not alone anymore." And that was always the point. I hit send. Then I stood and went back inside, back to the noise, the warmth, the laughter of my chosen family, and left the door open behind me. Because the mountain house was never about keeping people out. It was about finally having the power to choose who gets to come in. The end.